It's July 6th at 11:34 a.m., and this will be the interview with Ray Beck. All right. That's right there. Now, I really do appreciate you coming in, especially on a Saturday. And if we could start the interview just by you giving me a little bit of background information on yourself, where exactly you grew up, school and whatnot, that could start us off.
Well, first of all, thanks, Jack, for inviting me here. I appreciate that. I've always had an interest in history, and so a little of my background. I was born and raised in Steamboat Springs, up in Routt County.
Okay.
Graduated from high school in 1968.
Okay.
And I got a wrestling scholarship to CNCC, the college in Rangeley. So I went there and wrestled on a scholarship for 2 years and graduated in 1970. And then I came back to Steamboat, and shortly after I graduated in the spring of 70, I got married and started working for construction. Okay. So I did a little bit of what we call working for a carpenter. I was an apprentice and also worked for a place called Johnson Excavating, and the carpenter place I worked was Mayor Bonnie Construction. Okay. Back then, and there was a point in time there that it didn't take me only about a couple of years to figure out that now that I was married and wanted to raise a family, that I was going to need something that was more year-round than just seasonal. Right. And being from Routt County and raised and knowing what those winters could be like, I needed to establish myself. So in the fall of 1971, because of the guy that we knew and was affiliated with through our church, he called me up just before Thanksgiving and asked if I'd be interested in going to work for Yampa Valley Electric Association. And that was back then, Jack, when you didn't have to have a resume, you didn't have to sit through an interview process and go through all that selection and brain damage. Back then it was barely, it was who you knew. Right. And if they knew you growing up and they felt you were of integrity and would be a good worker, then you were hired. So he called me up, asked me if I'd like to go to work for Yampa Electric as a meter reader. And I said, absolutely. I said, when do I start? And he said, just show up on January 3rd. That was 1972 at 8 o'clock in the morning, and we'll go from there. Okay. And that was that simple. So I did, and long story short, I read meters for a couple of years. I also had an opportunity to be an equipment operator for about 6 months, then took out my apprenticeship, and that was a 3-year apprenticeship back then for a journeyman lineman, guy that climbs poles, keeps the lights on, and stuff like that. Did that, and I also had the opportunity to be a foreman for a while. Finished up my career. Towards the last 20 years was about substations, took care of substations. So I was a sub-tech and also a meter technician. Okay. And so I really enjoyed that, and it was a 37-year career. Retired in 2009. Oh, wow, okay. Yeah. Wow, it's 37 years. Yeah. And so the first 5 years that I worked up there, I was living, part of my time I lived up in Steamboat, and because of the fact that was about the time that Mount Warner started to develop. It was about the 1970s, and things started to get a little more expensive. What's Mount Warner? Mount Warner is a ski hill. Okay. And so as things got more expensive, it dawned on me that maybe we should just move to Hayden. So moved to Hayden, and I lived in Hayden for 5 years. Okay. But commuted back and forth between Steamboat, and at one point after the first 5 years, and I got my journeyman ticket, then I transferred to Craig. Oh, okay. To the Craig office. And I was still living in Hayden for a short time. And then in 1978, I purchased my home over on 595 Colorado Street. Okay. At that time, that home was not, it was in the process of being refurbished, for lack of a better term. And so they were remodeling it. Maybe that's a better word. And so the person I bought from gave me a little history about that place. The house, actually, and after reading the deed, was built in 1904. Wow. So our house, theoretically, is one of the oldest, if not, probably one of the oldest houses in Moffat County. Wow. And the subdivision that I live in, which is the, I want to call it the Craig Edition, but that's not, I think it's the Rosedale Edition, is probably the oldest subdivision in Craig.
Wow.
So, with that being said, jumping ahead in time, I retired in 2009. I was elected to City Council in 2007.
Okay.
And prior to that, Jack, about 10 years prior to that, it dawned on me was a point in time in my life when I figured it out, and it takes all of us time to figure these things out, that where I was working was no longer a career for me. I reached my potential in terms of how far I was going to climb the ladder, and decided that my career no longer was a career, but it was more of a job. So at that point in time, when I decided that, I started seeking things that I could do and give back to my community.
Right.
And so I organized the first NRA Foundation, Friends of NRA, back in 95, 96. At that point, we were the first in. And let me give you a background. That money that we raise, half of that money stays locally within the state. The other half goes back to the NRA in Fairfax, Virginia, for education and research programs. And so when that half of that money stays within the state, all the Friends of NRA groups are entitled to apply for those for grants. And one of the things that we sought was improving our 4-H shooting sports out here on County Road 7, where the Bears Ears Rifle Club is. And so did that for a couple of years. We were third in the state for raising the most money the first year I did it, and then the second year we were second in the state for raising the most money.
Wow.
And so from that point on, I kind of got involved off and on with the community. Had an opportunity to sell manufactured homes. I did that for a couple of years part-time while working for Yampa Electric. I also took out and applied for and passed my real estate exam. So I was a realtor for about 3.5 years while I was working for Yampa Electric and doing that part-time. And I was also on the Planning and Zoning Commission. And I was on there for about 3.5 years, about the same time I was doing real estate. And so from that point, my wife and I saw an ad in the paper that they were looking for people to run for office locally. And so we looked at that, and we both agreed that maybe that would be a good way to give back to the community. So I was elected to City Council in 2007, and as a result of that, our council has about 16 or 18 boards that we fund, and they like representation on those boards. And so we split those up. It's a 7-member council. That's 6 council people and a mayor. So we're a home rule municipality. And so as a result of those, that's also opened up doors in terms of those committees and boards that I sit on. One being the Yampa Valley Economic Development Commission, which is a regional board for economic development. I sat on the Craig Moffat County Airport Advisory Board as a city appointment.
Okay.
I also sit on the Yampa Valley Airport Commission, which is a joint appointment between the county and the city, and the only representative on that board, which entails the Hayden Regional Airport and the Bob Adams Airport and Steamboat.
Okay.
Okay. Currently, I served on that, since 2007, so we're going on 7 years, and of those 7 years, I've been chair 3 years, and I'm currently the chair of that commission.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Which is a 9-member board. And then locally, I served on this advisory board for 6 years. That's a 5-member board with our county manager, Jerry Holberg. And on that particular board, there are 2 city appointments and 2 county appointments and 1 city-county appointment together.
Okay.
And so since serving on that board, we have made a lot of progress in my estimation over the last 6 or 7 years, building a new terminal. We actually, my experience goes back to selling my manufactured homes, and learned a lot about that process. And after going to Washington, and I'll get into this Club 20 thing, with Club 20 back in 2007, and attending and talking to our congressional delegation back there, those folks told us that all the programs, or at least the ones that we attended and heard from, we either broke financially or physically. Whether it didn't matter whether it was natural resources or any federal program that we were sitting in on said that, you know, they should have been fixed 25 years ago. So with that bit of information, I came back and after reading the master plan, seeing that there was no priority particularly on our projects, or the fact that we didn't have to take those in order, mentioned to the advisory board that maybe we should try to build something or do something with the airport that we could actually locally fund, because there's only two funding sources locally that fund the Craig-Moffat County Airport, and that's the county and the city that put up money every year through the budget. And so we decided that we're going to build a new terminal. The one there was built in right around 1950. It had single pane windows. The doors didn't fit. There was asbestos in the tile and no insulation in the ceiling. And it was strictly cinder block with very little concrete in the cinder block walls. And so it basically sat on a slab. So with that in mind, we pursued building or bringing in a manufactured building, which was a residential building, which we converted to a commercial building, and we got us a new terminal, a little over 1,300 square feet, which houses, we got 2 offices, we got 2 restrooms, we have a lobby, and we have a boardroom. And it works out very well for our small airport, which is a general aviation airport. And so we've done other things there. We've also did maintenance to our tarmac, which is all that area where the planes park and stuff. We've also done maintenance to our runway, which is let's see, it's 100 feet wide by 5,600 feet long. We also upgraded the sewer system there. Just recently we put in another drain on the tarmac in front of the county hangar, and we just did that last summer. That was long overdue, and we got it up because after a while blacktop deteriorates, it cracks, and it seeks water, and then it gets destroyed from underneath, and it's just something that's an ongoing process for airports.
Right.
Also got a flagpole and a security light out there, and you know, helped also was instrumental in helping it get it landscaped. So I have a sense of pride having been part of that process.
Right.
So anyway, so that's kind of a long story of how I actually got to Craig and how I got involved in our community.
Okay. That's good. I'm just going to go back and then piece by piece we'll address each part. What was it like, first off, growing up in and around the area? Just growing up and seeing all these different communities grow.
You mean since I moved to in Steamboat?
Yeah, from Steamboat, Hayden, and Craig. What was it like growing up and then living in each of these communities?
Well, I could tell you, Jack, you know, Steamboat Springs was a great place to be a kid. You know, we lived down at what they call the Brooklyn Addition, and it was just, it actually wasn't, I don't think, even part of the city limits for a long time, but they had a stock car track down there, and the fairgrounds was down there, and I can remember walking to school, and the last couple of years that I was there, I had an opportunity to ride the bus, but it was, my dad was a Boy Scout master, you know, leader, and so I had an opportunity to join the Boy Scouts, and that was great. Of course, I wrestled throughout junior high and high school, and you know, that was one of my passions. But it was just a neat place to grow up. I mean, we didn't have all this red tape and politics and environmental stuff back then that we do now, that we deal with. And so when Steamboat actually became a ski town, it brought in different individuals. Not saying that's good or bad, but different mindsets. You know, bringing their ideas and stuff to. And as you travel through there, you see that it's very commercial, where back then it was not. And so I can remember one specific incident. We used to have a flour mill that sat on East Highway 40, just outside of Steamboat. And our house was across the river. It had a big picture window. And the flour mill, you know, it produced a lot of jobs for the locals. But I can remember it caught on fire and it burnt to the ground. For various reasons, and it burned for like 5 or 6 days, and I can remember coming home from school, and you could see that thing at night, and it was still smoldering, and you could still see some flames and stuff like that, but that was a historic moment back then.
Wow.
So And then of course when I went to college and came back and worked for a little while, I moved to Hayden. Hayden is still kind of that way. You know, it's a very close community. I can remember one time that we were going to be out of town, and we came back, and I noticed it in the paper that it said that the Ray Becks had gone. I don't remember where we went, but had gone somewhere. And I looked at my wife and I thought, man, these people must really be hurting for stories because, you know, who cares? I mean, really.
Well, still.
You know, but small communities.
Right.
And there was always somebody that made sure that they knew everybody else's business. So,
For you, by the way.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. So growing, so having experienced that, and of course I was working, you know, full time for Yampa Electric. It also gave me a opportunity. Actually, that was my first house in Steamboat at the Riverbend Trailer Court,
right,
which is on the west end of Steamboat. And then I bought a house in Hayden, which sat there at, I think it was 101 West Lincoln. It sat right across from the old fire department, and I had the opportunity to be on that fire department as a volunteer for about a year and a half before I moved to Craig.
Okay.
And that was a good experience for me too, because having lived right across the street, I could always be one of the first responders whenever we had a fire.
Right.
Now, I can remember one time I came home from work, and that was when I was on the fire department, and come around the corner, and I seen the garage doors open to the fire department, and I said, must be a fire, I wonder where that's at. And of course, they're taking me home, and I look across the street, and they're on top of my roof because we had a chimney fire.
Oh my goodness.
It didn't destroy anything, but the fact that, you know, I did not clean my chimney that fall, and typically I had always done that twice a year. And that one particular year, I thought, you know, it's going to be fine, so I didn't do it. And of course, we burned coal in there, and creosote was a contributor to that.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, as you're seeing, I mean, you have an interesting story in that you started and just continually moved towards, you know, Craig,
right,
and you've seen pieces of each of these communities develop. What was similar and what was different in each of these places as you came and settled and then left to the next community?
That's a good question. What was similar? You know, in terms of the geographical area, you know, there was some similarity there because Hayden's still pretty close to the mountains.
Okay.
In terms of the people, I think the mindset was, you know, there's still Routt County, so the mindset was pretty much the same then. And then of course Steamboat took off, you know, when they brought in the ski industry and those types of individuals. But I think that Hayden, even being a smaller community, was probably a little closer knit even than where I grew up. But I mean, those are two communities that, you know, everybody knew everybody, and you know, you could see them on the street, and of course, you know, you could wave and you'd know who they are.
Right.
Of course, that's changed over the years because we brought in different individuals who have moved to the areas, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. I mean, that brings in new ideas as well, and oftentimes economic development and new businesses.
Right.
And so, after having lived there for 5 years, we decided to sell the house and moved to Craig and purchased a house there over on 595 Colorado Street, and found out, you know, it was built in 1904.
Right.
And as a result of that, once I got elected to City Council in 2007, the mayor steered a committee, because in 2008 we actually celebrated our 100 years, our centennial. And so I was part of that committee to help organize the events for our Craig centennial. And actually we held part of those events right here in the museum.
Okay.
I can remember one of them. I think one of the first ones that kicked off that winter, and it made sense, you know, was the longest beard, the biggest beard, or whatever. So it was a beard growing contest, and so a lot of us were part of that.
Okay.
And we had other events that went on throughout the year. And going back to my house, I had convinced Dan that, you know, being one of the older houses, and it was well over 100 years, actually 104 years at that point, that if he wouldn't do a story on that, and he did.
Right.
And you know, you spoke about a sheriff because of your family and that you knew here. Well,
right.
Sheriff Valdez actually lived in the house that I lived in.
Wow.
According to the deed. And so I thought that was an interesting piece of history. Dan did a great story on the home that we currently live in. So we've remodeled it over the years, and I'm the longest. My wife and I are the longest living residents at that address, according to Dan.
Right.
He did some research, and he's a walking book of knowledge when it comes to the history of Craig and Moffat County.
Right.
So then, in going back to the centennial thing, I took and suggested that maybe we do an air fest for our centennial as a way of celebrating. So that was one of the things that I really contributed to, along with the other events, but kind of steered a small committee of 6. We organized, I believe, the first or second air fest ever at the Craig Moffat County Airport.
Okay.
And it was well attended out there. I mean, we had a static display where planes came in. We had World War II airplanes that came in, and so
wow.
we got to see some of that. And we had vendors out there. We had a barbecue out there. We had a high school band was part of it.
Right.
And so we had helicopters giving rides, and there were some small planes, including the Tuckers out there. They leased 3 acres there from the county, and it's called Mountain Air Spray. And so they're kind of a real asset to the airport in terms of, they take care of agricultural land in terms of spraying, and they spray for mosquitoes here and stuff like that. So, they got a long-standing family history of aviation locally.
Right.
And so, anyways, the Air Fest really turned out well, and I really felt proud to be part of that.
Right. That's good. So aviation seems to be something you've been very involved with. How has that developed since you've been involved, and even before?
Aviation was always something that intrigued me. I loved to fly, but it really took off once I had the opportunity to serve as a liaison to the city council, being involved with this airport and the one up at the... You got to understand, Jack, there's 74 airports in the state of Colorado.
Right.
Okay, and 60 of them are general aviation. The other 14 are commercial. And one of them being commercial is up here in the Hayden, at the Hayden and Yampa Valley Regional Airport. So, it's a lot different in terms of how we do things, what our priorities are, and it comes down to money. I mean, you're looking at FAA entitlement money for a general aviation airport. It's $150,000 a year.
Wow.
Well, you know as well as I know, Jack, you can't do a lot with $150,000. You can't hardly even buy a nice 3-bedroom, 2-bath house for $150,000 anywhere. Even though the economy has slowed down, to get a really nice home for that, I mean, you'd be fortunate to do that even here in Craig now. But going back to what I was saying, I think I lost my train of thought.
Oh, no problem. Talk about the differences. Yeah.
So you got a commercial airport, and we are very fortunate in this valley to have 3 airports within about 35, 37 nautical miles of each other. 2 general aviations and 1 commercial airport. So going back to the commercial airport, it's probably one of the most prestigious boards I've ever been able to be on and represent our local community.
Right.
And I say that because those Routt County individuals that sit on that board always made sure that the Craig Moffat County Airport was inclusive of reports or anything that was going on at our local airport. And I was always willing to give that information.
Right.
And it opened up the door so that I could represent Craig and Moffat as the chairperson for that group, and was also instrumental in helping go through their strategic plan, which was I think it's a 5 to 10 year plan that we had there, and there was a lot of participation from the community. And the next big project that we have is our master plan. We're in the process now of getting about 20 community members, including the Yampa Valley Regional Airport Commission members. That's a 9-member board. And so we're going to start that process. It'll be about an 18-month process. And the master plan is important because in order to get funding from the FAA, they require that all airports have a master plan, which is very important in terms of the funding that you receive. They like to know that it's there. They like to know that it's updated, and oftentimes that's based on whether you get funding or whether you don't get funding. And so that's our next big project. We've done a lot of capital projects up there. When I got on, they had just finished the first stage of remodeling the area on the west end of the terminal, which is where the ticket counters are for the different airlines. And then we moved forward going east. That building was completely redone, so we completed Phase 2 and Phase 3 since I've been there. And even going back a little farther, I was also instrumental in helping with the Yampa Electric get the three-phase power to that building. So I got some history with that airport. And then, of course, the restaurant was in the upstairs portion of the old part of the airport, and part of that Phase 3 was bringing that restaurant down to the main floor, so it could be more accessible to the customers.
Okay.
So it's been a long, ongoing relationship with those folks, and also at the same time a learning process.
Right.
Yeah. And since then, I found out this summer that our airport manager, Dave Routt, I had an opportunity to play in a golf tournament because of the Division of Aeronautics had their conference up there here about a month and a half ago. And it was just a golf scramble, and as I was walking to my cart, individual that I had met and known for a while hollered at me and confirmed that who I was, and I said, yeah, I am Ray. And he said, well, there's a very important matter I'd like to speak with you about after the golf tournament. And I said, sure. So we played our golf, and lo and behold, in Routt County and Moffat County, I mean, if you're going to play golf and it rains, I mean, you have no control of that. So obviously it was kind of rainy that day. Long story short, we played our golf game and sat down to eat our lunch, and I went over and talked to him. His name was Dave Gordon. He sits on the Division of Aeronautical, the State Aeronautical Board, and wanted to know if I'd be interested in filling out an application for the State Aeronautical Board. And I said, yeah, I would. And he said, well, you come highly recommended, and we'd love for you to apply. It's in a governor-appointed seat. It's a 7-member board. You can serve 2 3-year terms if you're appointed a second time. But it's having, with my background now, I feel like it's the next step, and it would be another way to give back, but not just locally, now throughout the state of Colorado, because we would control those funds that CDOT give to local airports as well, which is another source of funding that general aviation and commercial airports get, along with the FAA money.
Right.
And so that process, you fill out, you do your resume, you fill out an application, you get 3 letters of recommendation, and you send that in, which I just did last week. The governor will make those appointments around the 1st of December.
Okay.
And so with 7 members on that particular state board, 2 of them represent 2 seats represent the western part of Colorado.
Right.
So I would be, if I get appointed, I'd be one from this area, and there's one down from Nanarita that just got appointed the 1st of January.
Oh, okay. So with all this growth and all this interest in the airports and aviations in general, especially in this area, are there a lot of private plane owners in this area? There is.
I think at one point we tallied them up here in Craig. There's about 30 or 32 local pilots.
Wow. And that's just recreational flying?
Most of it is, yeah.
Okay.
And but with the Tuckers, they do a little recreational, but a lot of theirs is related to the business that they do.
Okay.
And we have small, this airport can, because of the length of our runway, we can support small jets. Now, Tri-State is one of our biggest contributors to that airport because of the power plant. So they'll fly here weekly and use our airport. And we've heard a lot of good comments about this general aviation airport and the way it's kept up, the maintenance, the new terminal building.
Right.
And it's just a very easy and accessible airport for pilots.
So the Trapper Mine and the power plant make big use of the airport.
They do. And so, and of course in the summertime we have firefighters from the BLM, and when we designed that building we made one office specifically just for them, so that they could use that if they need it while they're here during the summer. And it's only for a couple months, but nevertheless we felt that was important.
Right, they come in and work closely in the area.
And a lot of their helicopters will come in and they'll be on standby until they get asked to be transported somewhere else.
Okay.
Go ahead.
No, I was going to say I can't imagine that you have too much time with all the things that you're interested in and involved with. But outside of all of this, what do you do in general for recreation? What do you do around this area to just kind of unwind?
Well, one of the things that I really enjoy is my wife and I do like to travel when we can.
Mm-hmm.
We with friends were invited to go to Grand Cayman last December.
Mm-hmm.
And having never been there, having never used a passport, that was a whole new experience, and we just loved it. We were there for about 7 days, and just enjoying the beach, and did some snorkeling. I got to go first time ever on on what they call a shore dive. I actually
Mm-hmm.
went scuba diving.
That's awesome.
I mean, it was an incredible experience.
Right.
And so then in last part of March, first part of April, we went on our first ever Norwegian cruise. We were on the third largest cruise ship in the world.
Mm-hmm.
It was called the Epic.
Okay.
And that was another 7-day cruise.
Mm-hmm.
It was a 10-day vacation all, because by the time you fly from let's see, we flew from Denver to Miami, and then once we got to Miami, we were able to get on the ship.
Mm-hmm.
And I tell you what, it's a great experience. If you've never had the opportunity to do that, and if you ever do,
mm-hmm.
don't go the cheap way and just take a small cabin down on the lower floors.
Mm-hmm.
Get one where it actually has a deck, and you can sit out there and at night or in the morning and watch the sunrise or the sunset over a cup of coffee. It's totally awesome.
Okay.
You can just water forever.
Uh-huh.
And so we really did appreciate the food was excellent. I mean, I think of a cruise ship as nothing but a moving city.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I was thinking about that as we were coming home. They have everything on there but automobiles and gas stations.
Right.
Everything. I mean, they got shopping, they got gambling, they got fine eats, they got entertainment. And so it was just so that's one of the things. And then I also like to golf locally, and I support our local golf course. I think they do a great job out there.
Yeah.
And I'm a hunter, not an avid hunter, but I've done a lot of that over the years. But since being elected to office and with my boards and committees, that doesn't allow me a lot of time to do that particular sport. But I have hunted, and I enjoy it and support that.
Okay. With golf, then, how have you seen the golf course develop over?
Well, you know, it depends on a lot of that. The way our golf course is set up, you know, of course it takes good golf course management, and we've seen a lot of that. I mean, this golf course gets used by not only the locals, but we bring in a lot of people from not only out of state, but different parts of the state that come here for tournaments and stuff like that. I think that, and I just played there Friday. The golf course is in great shape. They're doing an excellent job out there. We got some new golf pro out there. And him and his wife are doing a good job, so we certainly appreciate what they're doing. If I could, I would like to go back to and maybe dive into the Club 20, because it ties a little bit into this aviation thing.
Of course, no problem.
So I belong to another organization called Club 20, which is the Voice of the Western Slope. It was actually organized in 1953, and the reason it was organized, Jack, was because of the lack of funding of transportation that we were getting on the Western Slope. So everybody on the Western Slope was vying for those state dollars so that they could fix their highways and roads, and it was kind of counterproductive. So a group of businessmen formed what they call Club 20, which is a representation of 20 counties on the Western Slope. And because of that collaborative effort, prior to them getting organized and doing this, only 7% of that money, or I was going to say 10% or less of that money, was actually coming to Western Colorado for highways.
Wow.
And because of Club 20, then we saw an increase of about 37% of the state money was coming to Western Slope to help with maintaining our highways and roads, which we felt were just as important as those on the Eastern Slope. I couldn't tell you exactly what that percentage is now in terms of Western Slope funding for transportation, but I know it's significantly better as a result of Club 20 that had been if Club 20 had never been organized.
Okay.
We were incorporated in 1955. We're 60 years old this year. Again, now we represent 22 counties. We reference ourselves as the Voice of the Western Slope. So we are a 501c6 organization, which allows us to to lobby and advocate for those things at the state and federal levels for things that are important to western Colorado, such as water and agriculture and natural resources. We got health, and we got education, and of course transportation, which started Club 20. And so every year in January, for those that can, we have the opportunity to go visit with our state legislators about those things that we have developed and become policy, and I'll get into that and how we develop policy. And then every odd year we have an opportunity to go to Washington, D.C. for those who can and afford and also can afford to go there. I've been there 4 times now as a representative to Club 20, but in the Western Slope in my community on things that are important to us. So the way we develop policy is I always say that our members are our lifeblood. They're the ones that pay the bills.
Right.
Okay, but our policy committees drive the bus, and we have 10 of those now. And so each policy committee has a chairperson. If you're a member of the Club 20, you can sit in on any of these policy committees, and you also have a vote.
Okay.
And so we come up with resolutions, and then we present those to the full board, which meets twice a year, which is a representative from each county that sits at a table. I'm the voting board member for Craig and Moffat County. I have 2 alternates that sit alongside.
For Craig and Moffat?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and so when I say voting board, we only get 1 vote. So when you're at the board meeting, each county that's represented gets 1 vote. And the alternates are there to support you, and also in the event that you can't be at that meeting, then they can fill in for you.
Right.
So that there's always representation. I think we have to have 15 communities there in order to have a quorum out of the 22, and I've never failed to see a quorum at our board meetings. We meet twice a year, once in the spring and once in the fall, to take those policies that the committees have developed, bring them to the board. If the board approves them, then they become policy. Those are the things we advocate for at the state and federal levels.
Okay, I see what you're saying.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. And so, going back to the Washington, D.C. thing, this year, our executive director, Bonnie Peterson, asked, are there individuals or groups that you'd like to meet with? And I mentioned the FAA, which I had done 2 years ago as well. So we got to meet with some of the upper echelon or staff of the FAA at the federal level. So myself and 1 other representative, Club 20 member, and 1 staff person went and spent a good afternoon meeting with Kate Lang, who sits at the higher level of that. We also met with Bill Payne, who is Mr. Aviation, because he's very instrumental in helping us get the wide area multilateration system upgrade here for Colorado. 8 mountain community airports actually were part of this. It was a pilot program that Bill Payne was instrumental in getting for this area over here, which is an enhanced radar system.
Okay.
Prior to getting this wide area lateral multilateration enhanced radar system set up, Denver Center couldn't see airplanes on the radar less than 600 feet. So 600 feet above the ground, once they got below that, it kind of disappeared off the radar.
Okay.
So when this system came into effect, it even was better than what they'd hoped for. Now they can actually see them land on the tarmac, on the runway.
Right.
And so that has improved safety by a lot.
Right.
A lot of times accidents can happen. That last 600 feet as you're coming in for a landing or getting ready to take off can be very crucial. And so that was, actually, when I want to say that we heard from those people that we visited with at the FAA in Washington that now Colorado is deemed the poster child of aviation.
Oh.
Just because of our policies here through the State Aeronautical Board, Division of Aeronautics, and what has taken place with this. Everybody now in the state, in the United States, would like to have that, but it's about funding, and nobody has those funds at this time. So we are very fortunate to have that here in Colorado.
Right.
So that was the other piece I wanted to throw in on the and of course, I'm talking about rifle, I'm talking about Steamboat Craig, Hayden Airport, they all have this new enhanced radar system.
And there is an airport in each one of those.
Exactly.
In each one of these cities. Wow.
Yeah.
Now, going a little bit back to the Club 20, what's the most recent type of modernization project that group's undertaken? What still needs to be improved in Craig in terms of the finances? What are you still seeking money for?
Well, we don't go out and seek necessarily so much as money as we when we develop. Well, we do and we don't. I mean, we're kind of like I say, the voice of the Western Slope. We don't write grants or anything like that based on policy and legislation, and how that comes about through legislation, whether there's ever any money. Such as an example would be any water projects or any transportation projects, education projects, and how that might look in terms of where it goes on the ballot and when. And so those are the types of conversations that we have. But Club 20 has a lot of moving parts. And not only do we have our board meetings and our policy committee meetings, and we have our staff organizing all these events, we used to have a golf tournament that we attended annually, and that took a lot of time and effort. We decided a couple of years ago that while that was a social time for Club 20, it really never did produce a lot of memberships, if any, out of that. I mean, I played in that golf tournament. So a couple of years ago, I talked to staff and thought maybe we ought to shift gears here. And so we developed what we call our Club 20 Leadership Program. And this was our second year. What our intent is to grow leaders from all walks of life. And whether it be nonprofit, whether it be political or business, we felt that this would be a way that we could have our own leadership program on the Western Slope and people could attend. And it's a day-and-a-half event. We just held it back on June 6th and 7th at the Doubletree down in Grand Junction. We had a guy out of, I think he's from Georgia, but his name was Dan Thurman. You can go on the internet and find him. But we have a number of excellent speakers that come and speak to leadership. So that was one of the newer programs. I was also involved about 4 years ago in developing a marketing plan for Club 20. Club 20 always had a plan to market, but they never had a marketing plan where they actually had a document that said these are our goals and objectives that were attainable and reachable. And so since we've developed that marketing plan, we've been able to reach those goals and objectives every year and succeed them in excess. So we're kind of proud of that, the fact that we do have that, and it's just a good document to keep updated every year. And I work with as the membership chair, and because of that classification, that allows me to sit on the executive board, which is a 15-member board representing, and we're an advisory board to the full board. And so our membership is about 1,000 members strong, and so my role is to work with staff, not only in the recruiting process, but the retention process of members.
Okay.
And I just find that Club 20 is a good organization to belong to, particularly if you want to give back to your community and be involved in state and federal issues.
Okay. If we kind of narrow it then and come all the way down just to Craig itself, how, in your time in Craig since 1978, I think you said, since 1978, how have you seen the community of Craig develop? Just in general, the people, businesses, booms and busts, how have you seen Craig specifically develop since 1978?
Well, there's a couple ways I could answer that. Physical development, I think that we're always seeking economic development. Economic development is one that I feel is really important. I support economic development because it brings in jobs and opportunities locally, and I don't have any problem with competition. I think competition is good, and let the free market and free enterprise do what they always have done.
Right.
So government basically stays out of that, other than the fact we do fund at a council level, and also the county, they fund the economic development here in Craig. But just in the last 3 or 4 years, as an example, we got a new hospital. So that bond issue went before the voters and was passed.
Right.
We got a new elementary school.
Mm.
Here, middle school, actually, what it is, out here north of town, and so the Sandrock School up there was another bond issue that passed. In fact, they both passed the same year.
Okay.
The other thing that we've seen is a new Craig Colorado Northwestern Community College campus up on the hill, which is just north of the new hospital.
Okay.
So, and I think those are really nice additions here to have in Craig. I've seen in just the last couple of years the come and goes have it remodeled, the one on the north and the one on the west end. Now we've got plans to rebuild the one out here on the east end of town, which will probably be very close to being the largest one in the state.
Oh, wow.
It's going to be larger than the one down in Rifle. So we're going to have, I think it's maybe 10 or 12 gas station pumps and some diesel pumps as well, and it'll be a good place for truckers to park, because they are purchasing that land from the county.
Right.
So it's going to be a great addition. It's I think close to 5,000 square building.
Wow.
Close to 5,000 square feet.
Okay.
And of course we have the planning, our planning and zoning director, Dave Costa, is overseeing that, doing a great job. And so I served on that commission with Dave for 3.5 years and helped rewrite our land use code. So I'm excited about the new come and go coming up. I think that'll be a great addition and to the eastern part of the eastern section of Craig on the east part there.
Right.
But I think I don't know that we're growing so much in population. I think if anything we've probably lost just because of the economy.
Right.
But I will tell you that I'm involved now with a program called SET, which is Stronger Economies Together. It's a regional program which is hosted by U.S. Rural Development and Colorado State University, Fort Collins. And so this program is a nine-month program trying to come up with a strategic plan and working together, which is Routt, Moffat, and Rio Blanco, and capitalizing on those entities that are where we have common ground, and then strengthening those things where we don't have common ground, and also seeking opportunities where we can have regional economic development.
Right.
Those three that we came up with that we have in common are recreation, energy, and agriculture.
Okay.
Seems to be pretty much all throughout our region, Moffat, Routt, and Rio Blanco counties.
Okay. Okay.
And so I sit on a subcommittee, and so we have developed our vision statement. We'll finalize that at our next meeting coming up on Wednesday. Is that the 10th, I believe?
That's the 10th.
Yeah. So that meeting's coming up, and we spread these meetings out between Meeker, Steamboat, and Craig, and the next one's going to be down in Meeker.
And the goal is, again, to continually help development in the region.
Help development,
Okay.
And one job, one business, and so going back to energy, Tri-State employs about 300 people, and that's direct jobs, and they affect another 430 jobs roughly, indirect jobs. That's just them. Tri-State also purchased Colo coal mine, and they support Trapper, because they support both the Colo and Trapper in the fact that they purchased their coal from them to supply the coal for our power plant.
Okay.
Our generation power plant.
Okay.
And so it's very significant. Energy is very significant here in this valley, and so we're supporters of clean coal technology and our fossil fuels. I believe in renewables, but I also believe there needs to be a balance. And so we can't forget where we came from, and fossil fuels have brought us to this part. And I know Tri-State is doing everything they can to meet those mandates that are sent down most recently. The last one that was passed was Senate Bill 252, which was 20% renewable by 2020. I got to tell you, that's going to be a huge burden to Tri-State financially, and to get that done. So, and it may even come down to where those costs are passed on to the consumer.
So recent legislation is a main catalyst in the way the mine and the power plant are doing business locally. And what you're saying is, if I'm wrong, please correct me, that this is really having a dramatic effect kind of on the community and will in the future.
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. So,
Wow.
anyways, energy very important. Agriculture, I was able to sit in on a meeting through Farm Bureau. I had heard of Farm Bureau for many years, never actually was in a meeting. I learned a lot from that. Most recently, I think it was this spring, and learning how important agriculture economically is to our community.
Right.
You know, people buy food, but do they really ever give any thought to where it came from? And when you think about that, that's huge.
Right, I agree.
And so, you know, we support that. Recreation, our hunting here is absolutely paramount to most states in the in the United States. We have some of the best hunting here in Moffat and Routt County and Rio Blanco across the nation. And so that's a huge part of our economy when we bring in our hunters.
Right.
And so we certainly do appreciate them and support them as well.
Okay.
And of course, this last thing that happened this year was the new gun laws, which we're not really happy about. We think that it was a knee-jerk reaction to some of the shootings that have taken place throughout our nation.
And what are these new gun laws? Are you speaking about local?
Well, they actually are state laws now.
Oh, state laws.
State laws that affect all of us throughout the state of Colorado. We've probably got some of the strictest gun laws now in the nation, and people are looking to us and to see how that's going to affect the economy and our Second Amendment rights. And so I think that it's I guess what you'll hear from people is just another way of the federal government chipping away at our Second Amendment. You know, they take a little here, and then the next time they're going to take a little more, and pretty soon that we may not have that right to keep and bear arms. So.
Okay.
So that was another piece that came out that folks aren't happy about either.
Okay.
Including myself.
Is there anything else in general you'd like to add just about Craig, the area, just to kind of wrap up?
Well, let's see. As I think about that, I'd like to see, you know, as any community, I'd like to see us continue to grow. I'd like to see our local elected officials be proactive rather than reactive, and I think we do a pretty good job of that.
Okay.
But I'd like to see that continue. I've appreciated the opportunity to serve my community, whether it be a liaison to a board or committee, and also as a city council representative. It's been a huge learning process, but it's also given me that opportunity to give back. I never took that opportunity back when I was going to high school to be drafted into the military.
Right.
And so this is my way rather than, you know, I didn't get to serve my country, but I can serve my community.
Right.
And I think it's, in fact, I have to say, maybe closing, that, you know, volunteerism is the lifeblood of this nation. And when you have people that'll step up and volunteer to serve their community in whatever capacity that is, I think that says a lot to that individual.
Right.
So I think volunteerism is important, and we got to continue to support those folks that do that.
All right. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. I hope that's helpful. That's for you.